It's Latin for wheels or rotors or rotation. You're welcome. Wow, what an intro, eh? Hopefully you got a few questions there. Don't worry, we'll get to all that in this series of videos I'm making for you. Hi, my name's Chris. I'm a civil engineer. For the last 20 years, I've spent my career designing and delivering the infrastructure you all know and love. Footpaths, roads, drains, bridges, all good stuff. As a professional engineer in that time, I've been trusted to run large projects, deliver big infrastructure, run teams, even manage a design office. Earlier this year, we decided to have a gap year from work and head off in the caravan for a year with our family and travel around Australia. And during that time, I've been doing some research and I've discovered something amazing that I need to share with you. So what started me on this journey was last year I saw a couple of videos and I thought they were pretty unbelievable. Was that aliens? Was that CGI? They looked realistic enough for me to dive in and have a look. So I dived into that rabbit hole. Here's the rabbit hole. And I found the rabbit. Let's have a closer look at him. And that symbol is the key to what we're going to be talking about. That is the structure of an aether whirlwind. So what are you talking about, Chris? Well, to put it simply, there is another force of nature. Like fire or electricity, there is another force of nature that's always been there, and now I understand how it works and how we can access it. And that is through ROTAS. So what is a ROTAS? The best place to start is with the Sator ROTAS square. You may have seen this before. I don't know who made it. Some champion many, many years ago carved these out of stone, and it's encoded a message in there. That's recently been decoded by a few people. And what this square says is Sator is the seeder or creator. A repo doesn't actually have a direct translation, but it's thought that rep means repetition, like repping out on the bench press, from alpha to omega. From alpha to omega repetitively. Tenant is knowledge, opera is work, and rotas is wheels or whirlwinds. So what we're saying here is whirlwinds can do work, the work of the creator. Pretty big stuff. And what we're really talking about here is aether whirlwinds. So what are you talking about? I'm talking about what's called the quantum foam or the Dirac sea or the aether. What can these aether whirlwinds do for us? They can do all sorts of basically magic. They can pull matter apart. They can reassemble matter. We're talking about cold fusion. We can extract energy from matter and we can turn energy into matter. There's also time dilation and possibly gravity effects. So that's great, Chris, but how does it work? Well, I'd love to be able to just say that simply in one line for you, but unfortunately it's a little bit complicated. So that's why I've devised the ROTAS 10 steps to the aether. And we're going to run through these, a few foundational topics, and hopefully by the end of this series of videos, you'll understand what I've come to understand and hopefully open your mind a little bit and understand the real nature of our reality out there and how we can make it work for us. So each episode, I'm going to go through one of these foundational topics with you. We're going to spend a little bit of time in the what I call the cavitation laboratory or the cav lab. And we'll also do a little bit of a shout out of the week of some notable figure from the past or from current, inventors or significant people that have helped push this knowledge along. Is this technology currently being used? yes, there is some of this technology out there in different forms. One particular example that is proven is the thunderstorm generator or the GEET plasma device. These devices can be retrofitted to cars, internal combustion engines, and they turn carbon dioxide into oxygen. So that's pretty handy. So what is a whirlwind or a whirlpool? I'm sure we've all seen a whirlpool in the bathtub, or maybe a whirlwind. I love seeing the dust devils in the dry parts of Australia on our trip. So what is it? A whirlwind is a structure or a thing that it is made out of air and it exists in air. Similarly, a whirlpool is made out of water and it exists in water. So it's a structure or a thing that is made out of the medium that it exists in. So what is it then? Well, it's an energetic structure. If it's made out of the material that it exists in, the only thing that differentiates it is that it contains energy, kinetic energy. So if I take that whirlwind, here we have a whirlwind modelled as a piece of hose, and that whirlwind joins together to form a ring, we now have a self-contained whirlwind structure called a torus or a toroid. Now these can come in different forms or shapes. We can have small ones, or we can have larger ones. Might be a bit hard to see up here. So we can have a large torus, they can be wide, they can even squeeze together to form basically a sphere. And we can make toruses in the air with a vortex cannon. Here we go, I've made a quick and cheap and cheerful vortex cannon, a hole, balloon, and we can shoot little air vortexes with that. We can also make them in water by pushing a plate through the water. It's a bit wavy today, but here's some footage I've prepared earlier showing exactly this. What I love about the water version is the surface of the water acts like a barrier. We only get half a vortex. So what we see is half of a torus travelling through the water, and we get to see the top ends of that torus. They can be made fully in water, similar to what we're doing in the air, and get a full closed ring. Now I haven't been able to capture great footage of a torus in the air, but this guy has some amazing footage, which I'm going to show you now. He's set up a beautiful air cannon and some lighting, and you can really see the torus structure flowing through the air, self-contained, energetic structure, can move through the air. So now when we look at our ROTAS geometry, we can see with this little model here, we have the hose representing the inner torus and then the outer shell around that. Now this inner torus represented by the hose will be a plasma torus. We'll cover that in more detail later on. So the key takeaways we have here: a torus is a whirlwind which is joined together to make a self-contained ring. It is made out of the medium that it is in. We see them in fluids like air and water, and the ether is a fluid, a superfluid. So we can make toruses or whirlwinds in the ether. Well, in each episode I want to do what I'm calling like the cavitation laboratory. So what are you up to here, Chris? Well, for me to understand something fully, I need to get my hands on it and pull it apart, have a look at it, poke different things, see how it works. Initially, when I was getting excited about this technology, I thought the GEET engine would be the most accessible way to get involved. That's basically a collection of plumbing parts assembled to make this reactor system. I bought all those parts, but then having decided to go in a caravan for a year, probably wasn't feasible to continue that project. So I kept looking around and I saw Bob had this ultrasonic cavitation experiment called the ULTR experiment. A very inexpensive and accessible way to get involved. And as it turns out, I am really grateful that ultra and cavitation is the way that I've come into this, because the visual aspect and what you can learn from just watching what's going on is incredible. I don't think that would have happened with the GEET engine. So I think that's happened very well, and I'm happy that we're here and I can show you some of the things I've learned. And honestly, it feels like a pretty natural process to get involved. We're taking water, one of the most abundant things we have on this planet, and we're vibrating it. It doesn't get much more simple than that. So the little piece of hardware we're talking about is a little ultrasonic cleaner like this. Now I've had a couple of these now. Actually broke one during a bit of a off-grid cold fusion. So that presents an opportunity to pull it apart and learn how it works. So I'm going to show you that now. So I've had a variety of ultrasonic cleaners here. Got the nice little, first one I got from Kmart, 18 watts, small little jobby. You know, haven't really played with it too much, to be honest, because I got these ones shortly thereafter, 35 watts, 40,000 hertz. Also tried a different model here. This is the one I broke. So when you break something, great opportunity, we can pull it apart. Have a look inside. So what do we got in here? We got the lid, we got the bowl. This is actually the nuts and bolts of it, really. So this is just a little holder, control panel. Not much going on there. And inside we have the circuitry, which is the signal generator. This is really what it's all about. The piezoelectric resonating crystal down the bottom here. Stainless steel container. And that is essentially it. This is essentially a speaker that plays one note. That note is 40,000 hertz. It can handle 30 watts of power. And this is the amplifier that generates one note, 40,000 hertz. Presumably at 30 watts. So that's it. It's basically an amplifier, a speaker, playing ultrasonic sound into this cavity. So simple. And as a comparison between these, I've got this other type here, just out of interest. This one seems to be a bit more of a straight edge with the round side, straight long sections. This one here has a bit more of a curve in it. Now, I seem to have been getting better results from this one. I actually bought two of these, so the broken one and another one. Better results from this shape than this shape, leading me to think the shape of it is really a critical element to how it goes. So like I said, normally for this session we'll run through something that looks a bit like this, but for this first session I thought we should honour the process and do a replication of the Ultra experiment. I'll have a whole session dedicated to cavitation and what's going on, but simply ultrasonic cavitation is the use of sound waves stacking up those sound waves to create a low pressure zone in the water, which allows the water to boil in a low pressure situation. When those sound waves have gone, that bubble is left there, surrounded by water, and it immediately collapses. And it's that collapsing where the magic happens. It can collapse in a toroidal form, and that vapor that's in the bubble can start spinning and creating an ether whirlwind. Can interact with the ether and start drawing in the ether. What we'll see from the Ultra experiment is footprints or evidence of these ether whirlwinds. It's a very simple way to verify that this is actually happening. So we'll show you that now. In this video we will be replicating Bob Greenyer's ULTR experiment. And so this is all you need for the experiment. Here we've got the ultrasonic cleaner, we've got a bit of regular aluminium foil. I've got a stick because I sometimes like to poke it. And pop that in there. I won't subject you to the ultrasound noise, it's a bit much. I've sped this up so we don't have to sit through it, but you can clearly see the damage patterns starting to emerge there. One of the reasons aluminium's used in this experiment is that it turns out to be a perfect food for these plasmoids or ether whirlwinds, together with the hydrogen and oxygen in the water. It gives them all the food they need to rapidly grow and then fall apart, leaving marks on the foil that we can have a look at. Otherwise we'll probably use it all up. And then we will pull this out. You can see in the water there's little specks of aluminium, and if we run it again, see a lot of dancing around there. It's enough for the plasmoids to live in. Love it. And then here we go, we can see we got lots of damage. So we're going to bust out the microscope and have a little look at that. This is my little USB microscope. Here's the shiny side of the foil and the dull side of the foil, and this is the high-tech microscopy I was getting up to. Alright, so we've got a bit of foil under there. Let's move it around, see what we can see. Over here we've got lots of little swirlies. See if we can focus that a little bit. So I've sped this up to run through just to give you a bit of an idea of what's going on in the area. You can see the extent of damage, the different patterns and sort of clusters that are forming. Probably take note of the circular little impact marks and how they're all clustered together in different formations. So we're going to jump in and have a look at what's causing these impact marks. I'm just going to explain my understanding of what's going on in the water cavitation there. So the cavitation process has happened and we've created a little aether whirlwind, aether Taurus. It's flying around in there, and then it gets lodged in the aluminium. So this piece of paper represents the aluminium, so it's sort of, you can see that, half in, half out. And then what we get in this paper here, we'll have one and two. One will be pointing out, one will be pointing in. So because these are an aether whirlwind, they can travel through ordinary matter, such as aluminium, so hence why it can be sort of half in, half out. And then when it explodes, it has a white hole and a black hole. One will be pointing out and one will be pointing in, and that's what we are seeing under the microscope on a tiny scale. So now we've seen verification of the process, and the reason aluminium is used is because that's a great food for the plasmoids or ball lightning or exotic vacuum objects. They have a few names. So after using foil in the Ultra experiment, I started using other types of aluminium, and that's where things got really interesting. So you've seen the Ultra experiment. Now I'm going to show you some of the wild stuff that I've seen during these cavitation sessions, the orbs. Wow. Well, I might be pretty biased, but I reckon that's some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen, and I did it all by myself. So the first shout out we have to do has to be Bob Greenyer.
Hi, Chris.
What's that? Is that the voice of Bob?
Hi, Chris.
Bob volunteers for the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. This project was set up to follow on from the work of Martin Fleischmann, as in Pons and Fleischmann. Bob has been championing the replication, verification, and open sourcing all the research that goes on. I've probably watched hundreds of hours of Bob's content, and it took some time to understand some of the concepts he was talking about. So that's what I'm hoping for with these videos, that these can provide an on-ramp to help other people get on board and look at some of the content from the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. I'm going to let Bob do a quick run through of the work he does at the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project.
Okay. So we looked at a Hutchinson sample there, and we had a yang and a yin. It's typical 20 micron structure. You can see the hole and the peak in these two structures on the boundary layer between this teleported metal that teleported into this lump of aluminium. And on the boundary layer, we saw the iron-rich crenellated spheres, which we now know are the core of the fractal toroidal geometry. And of course, it is this iron and oxygen predominantly. There's a little bit of chrome because this would have stripped metal out of the knife because it got bound to the iron in the knife. Winston Bostick doing the first plasma toroids and saying that this could be the basis for the structure of all matter from subatomic to the formation of galaxies. But what this is a deuterated titanium electrode, produces a current loop, very high current pulse, short duration. It has these magnetic colloidal moments on there and so on. And so basically you end up with two yin and yang structures coming together in the center. These are your various kind of smoke ring toroids. This is how we derived our 48. This is our 48 structure, the wheel within a wheel within a wheel minimally. And this is the 48 on the flying disc of the sky gods on the Sumerian tablet. This is, just so I can give him credit in this presentation, Vladimir Dubovic. We showed how we can make matter disappear. And on the boundary in this Henk-Uren experiment, we found the various structures, and this is critical. And as I've said, 4 is the first time it comes under control, but to get this properly working, you need at least 6. Here you can see 4 is where the disruption beam goes into the non-radiating boundary of the substructure on the in the ring of a tor above. But when we get to 5, it's well inside the non-radiating boundary, but only when you get to 6 does the disruption beam go inside the apple. And the apple is very, very critical. Here is what I was referring to earlier, the 1979 propulsion concept by A.C. Holt, field resonance propulsion concept. And in this diagram, they have the current loop, current loop, current loop, current loop, current loop, current. They've chosen 6. So this is the person that went on to lead the propulsion in a degree and then eventually worked with Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis in much more recent times on propulsion systems. And here we've got the magnetic fields reconnecting to produce a vortex in the center, which is the toroidal moment that leads to the monopole, which you can see on this peer-reviewed 2020 research, which you can see here on the Aalto University synthetic monopole, but eventually it became found on a boson-Einstein condensate. Here is the hypertoroidal moment that leads to the apple shape and so forth. This is the flight to Alpha Centaurus. We discussed this last time, where they released the hidden energy within matter, and they say that this is the same thing as cold fusion. This is from classified paper from 1992. This video, we show how these things don't interact with each other, or they, if it's going to let it play, it's going to let it play. There we go. This is how they interact with each other, but not with the field here. This is an actual picture of a toroid, or a video of a toroid with the vortex coming in. And this is looking through the ball lightning sheath. And when you see that flash, it's firing off. It's come destabilized from its umbilical cord, and it's shooting off and leaving these marks on the fused quartz with a 6-order structure, a 4-order structure, a multi-order structure here. And these are better resolved ones than were observed by Bostick and Nardi. And we're going to see a paper which is going to blow your mind in a second. It's going to be by the propulsion labs, which we looked at last time. But you can see here that in Bostick and Nardi's work, this is a torus with tori orthogonally arranged.
And so as you can see there, there's lots of science, lots of research papers, lots of electron microscopes, lots of data, lots of proof. Bob's work has been instrumental in my understanding of the process. So I would personally like to thank Bob and recognise him for all the work he's been doing over the last, I think he's been at it for about 12 years. So, thanks, Bob. So how do you get from the Ultra experiment to plasma orbs? Well, you'll have to keep watching to find out. Thanks for watching. I never thought I'd be making videos of myself and putting them on the internet, but I feel like this knowledge is too important not to share. So I hope you've got something valuable with your time, and I thank you for watching. ROTAS!